Commander Alex Turner stared at the display screen showing the dead world floating in the darkness of space. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, covered in brown and gray patches with no sign of clouds or water. The red dwarf star it circled gave everything a dim orange glow that made the world look like an old photograph. "All scans confirm what we already knew," said Dr. Maria Santos from her station. "No life signs anywhere on the surface. Atmosphere is stable, temperature ranges are perfect for human settlement. The mineral readings are incredible, though." Alex nodded and looked at the rest of his small team. They had been traveling for 3 months to reach this remote system, and so far everything matched the long-range surveys. Planet Kepler 442c was supposed to be their easiest assignment yet. A dead rock with perfect conditions for terraforming, rich in rare metals, and far enough from any hostile alien territories to be completely safe. "Take us down to the landing site," Alex ordered the pilot. "Let's get our feet on solid ground and start the real work." The shuttle descended through the thin atmosphere without any turbulence. The surface grew larger beneath them, revealing vast plains of crystalline rock formations that sparkled in the red sunlight. Strange geometric patterns covered the landscape, looking almost like circuit boards carved into the stone. Alex had seen many worlds in his 15 years with the Galactic Survey Corps, but nothing quite like this. They landed in a flat area between 2 large crystal formations. The moment Alex stepped out of the shuttle, he felt an odd sensation, like walking on a floor that was slightly vibrating. He dismissed it as his imagination and focused on setting up their temporary research. The team worked efficiently, having done this routine dozens of times before. Within 4 hours, they had established a basic camp with living quarters, a communications array, and their geological survey equipment. The planet's gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard, making the work easier than usual. "These crystal formations are fascinating," Maria said as she ran her scanner over a nearby outcrop. "They're not like anything in our databases. The structure is incredibly complex, almost like they're organized in some kind of pattern." Alex walked over to examine the crystals himself. They were perfectly clear, about the size of his fist, and arranged in long chains that stretched across the rocky ground. When he touched one, it felt warm despite the cool air temperature. "Could they be artificial?" he asked. "That's what's strange," Maria replied. "They show signs of being naturally formed over millions of years, but the patterns are too regular. It's like nature decided to build computer circuits out of stone." The first week passed without incident. The team took samples, mapped the local area, and sent regular reports back to the Survey Corps' headquarters. The planet remained completely silent except for the low whistle of wind through the crystal formations. No insects, no birds, no signs that anything had ever lived here. Alex found himself strangely relaxed by the silence. Most worlds they surveyed were either dangerous or noisy with local wildlife. This place felt almost meditative in its complete stillness. He began taking long walks among the crystal formations during his off-duty hours, enjoying the peaceful solitude. During the second week, they began deeper geological surveys. The planet's crust showed unusual density readings, as if something massive was buried far below the surface. Maria convinced Alex to approve drilling operations to get core samples from deeper layers. "The mineral wealth down there could be enormous," she explained. "These readings suggest metal deposits unlike anything we've ever seen. If we can confirm it, this planet could become one of the most valuable mining operations in the galaxy." The drilling equipment arrived via supply shuttle, and they began their first deep penetration the following day. The drill bit easily through the surface rock and crystal formations, sending up clouds of glittering dust that caught the red sunlight like tiny diamonds as they drilled deeper. The equipment began picking up strange readings. The crystals weren't just on the surface. They extended down into the planet's crust in an intricate network that seemed to connect across vast distances. Even more puzzling, the crystals appeared to be conducting some kind of energy. "Look at this," Maria said, pointing to her scanner display. "The crystals are carrying electrical impulses. Very faint, but definitely there. It's like they're part of some kind of communication system. Alex frowned at the readings. Communication between... What? There's nothing alive here. That's what we thought, Maria replied. But these patterns are too complex to be random. Something is generating these signals, even if we can't detect what it is. The drilling continued for several more days. Each meter they penetrated revealed more of the crystalline network, growing more complex and densely packed the deeper they went. The energy readings grew stronger too, as if their drilling was somehow activating dormant systems. On the 20th day of their mission, they achieved their deepest penetration yet, nearly 2 kilometers into the planet's crust. The drill samples they brought up were unlike anything they had seen before. The crystals were larger, more perfectly formed, and glowing with a faint inner light that pulsed in regular rhythms. It's almost like a heartbeat, Maria whispered as she examined the samples. These pulses are coming at regular intervals, about once every few seconds. Alex watched the glowing crystals with growing unease. Something about their rhythmic pulsing made him feel like he was looking at something alive, something that had been sleeping and was now starting to wake up. That night, as the team slept in their temporary quarters, none of them noticed the subtle changes happening around them. The crystal formations throughout the area began pulsing in synchronized patterns, and the ground beneath their feet started to shift almost imperceptibly. The quiet planet was no longer quite so quiet. Deep. Beneath the surface, something ancient and vast was stirring. The drilling had penetrated more than just rock and crystal. It had reached into the consciousness of something that had been dormant for millions of years. Alex lay in his sleeping bag. He felt the faint vibration in the ground growing stronger. In his dreams, he heard a sound like whispers in a language he couldn't understand, coming from somewhere far below. The peaceful silence of the planet was about to end, and with it the galaxy's peace as well. Alex woke to the sound of alarms blaring through the research station. The ground beneath his sleeping bag was shaking, not violently, but with a steady rhythm that felt disturbingly familiar. He stumbled out of his quarters to find Maria already. At her monitoring station, her face pale in the glow of the warning lights. "The seismic readings are off the charts," she said without looking up, "but this isn't a normal earthquake. The tremors are following the same pattern as those crystal pulses we recorded yesterday." Alex looked at the displays showing readings from sensors placed around their landing site. The crystalline formations were all glowing now, their light pulsing in perfect synchronization across the entire visible landscape. The faint energy readings they had detected before were now powerful enough to interfere with their equipment. Could our drilling have triggered some kind of geological instability? Alex asked. Maria shook her head. "That's what I thought at first, but look at these patterns. The energy pulses are too organized, too purposeful. It's like the planet is trying to communicate." The rest of the team gathered around the monitoring station as the tremors continued. The pilot, an experienced man named Tom, looked worried as he checked their shuttle systems. "We might need to evacuate soon," Tom said. "If this gets much worse, we won't be able to launch safely." Alex studied the readings for several minutes, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The energy patterns were definitely not random. They showed complex mathematical relationships that reminded him of language structures. But the source appeared to be the entire planet itself, not any single location. "Maria, how deep do these crystal networks extend?" he asked. "Based on our scans, they go down at least 50 kilometers, she replied. "Maybe deeper." The network covers the entire planet's crust, all connected and all carrying the same energy patterns. "Like a nervous system," Alex said quietly. The implications of that thought hit him like a physical blow. If the crystalline network was similar to a nervous system, then what they were looking at wasn't just a planet with unusual geology, it was a living organism of impossible size. "Run a full scan of the planet's interior," Alex ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The deep scans took 3 hours to complete, during which time the tremors continued and the crystal formations grew brighter. When the results came in, they confirmed Alex's worst fears. The planet wasn't just covered in a crystal network. It was the crystal network. The entire world was one massive, interconnected organism that had been dormant for millions of years. The core isn't molten rock, Maria said in amazement. It's a gigantic crystal structure, more complex than anything we've ever seen. The whole planet is essentially one enormous brain. Alex felt his stomach drop. They had been walking on the surface of a sleeping giant, and their drilling had been like needles piercing into its consciousness. No wonder it was waking up. We need to contact headquarters immediately, he said. This discovery changes everything. But when Tom tried to send their report, the communication array was being disrupted by the increasing energy emissions from the planet. The crystalline network was interfering with their equipment, making it impossible to establish a clear connection with the outside galaxy. I can get through for a few seconds at a time, Tom said, but the signal keeps getting jammed. Alex made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Send an emergency beacon? Tell them we've discovered a living planet and request immediate evacuation. Don't try to explain everything, just get the message out. As Tom worked to transmit their desperate message, the planet's awakening accelerated. The tremors grew stronger, and the crystal formations began changing color from their original clear appearance to a deep red that matched the star above. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. Maria was studying her instruments when she made another disturbing discovery. The planet is scanning us, she said. I'm detecting focused energy beams, examining our equipment, our shuttle, even our bodies. It's learning about us. Alex realized they were no longer just observers. They were subjects being studied by an intelligence beyond their comprehension. The planet was examining every piece of technology they had brought, analyzing their biological signatures, and somehow accessing the data stored in their computers. It's reading our files, Tom said urgently. The computer systems are being accessed by some kind of external signal. All our star charts, population data, everything about human civilization is being downloaded. The full horror of the situation became clear to Alex. They hadn't just awakened a sleeping giant. They had introduced it to the existence of the rest of the galaxy. The planet was learning about the billions of lives on thousands of worlds, and from its perspective, all of that activity and noise must seem like a terrible disturbance to the cosmic silence. It had known for eons. The ground shook more violently, and cracks began appearing in the crystal formations around their camp. But instead of the random fractures expected from seismic activity, the cracks formed geometric patterns that looked almost like writing. The planet was trying to communicate, but its messages were written in a language of stone and crystal that they couldn't understand. We need to evacuate now, Tom said. The shuttle can still launch, but if these tremors get much worse, we'll be stranded here. Alex looked at the data they had collected, knowing it was probably the most important discovery in human history. But staying to study the awakening planet would likely mean death, and the galaxy needed to know what was happening here. Pack only the essential samples, he ordered. We leave in 10 minutes. As the team rushed to gather their most important research data, the planet's consciousness continued to expand its awareness. Through their computers and communication systems, it was learning about the vast network of civilizations that existed beyond its quiet system. The discovery filled it with something that might have been fear or anger, or simply an overwhelming need to restore the silence that had been its existence for millions of years. The shuttle lifted off. Just as the tremors reached dangerous levels, as they climbed toward orbit, Alex looked back at the planet's surface and saw that the crystal formations were now glowing bright red across the entire visible hemisphere. The planet was fully awake, and it was not happy about the universe it had discovered. Message sent successfully, Tom reported. Emergency beacon is transmitting our location and situation. Alex nodded, but he knew that by the time help arrived, it might be too late. The planet below them was no longer content to remain in its remote orbit. It was learning about the galaxy, and from what he could tell from the energy readings, it was preparing to do something about all the noise and activity that surrounded it. The quiet planet had become aware of the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to discover what happened when you woke up something that had been sleeping for millions of years. The emergency beacon reached the Galactic Council headquarters 3 days after Alex's team escaped from the awakening planet. Ambassador David Chin sat in the council chambers reading the report for the third time, trying to understand what his scientific advisors were telling him. "A living planet," he said to Dr. Lisa Park, the council's chief xenobiologist. "Are we certain this isn't some kind of equipment malfunction or misinterpretation of the data?" Dr. Park shook her head. "The evidence is overwhelming. The crystalline network structures, the synchronized energy patterns, the way it accessed their computer systems, this is definitely a planetary-scale consciousness. And according to their final transmissions, it was becoming increasingly active." Chun looked at the star map showing the location of the planet. It was in a remote system, far from any major population centers, but well within the boundaries of explored space. "What's the current status of the system?" "That's what's troubling," Dr. Park replied. "All our long-range sensors show massive energy emissions coming from the planet. The readings are unlike anything we've recorded before. It appears to be manipulating gravitational fields around itself." Before Chun could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber with an urgent message. "Sir, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the New Geneva system. They're reporting gravitational anomalies and requesting immediate assistance." Chun felt his blood run cold. New Geneva was the closest inhabited system to where the planet had been discovered. "How many people live there?" 12 million colonists, sir. 3 major cities and dozens of smaller settlements." Chun activated the main display screen to show the New Geneva system. What he saw made his hands tremble. The planet that Alex's team had awakened was no longer in its original orbit. Somehow, it had moved itself across interstellar space and was approaching the New Geneva system. How is that possible? Chun asked. Dr. Park was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. "It's manipulating space-time itself. The gravitational distortions around the planet are bending the fabric of space, allowing it to move at speeds that should be impossible for something that massive." The transmission from New Geneva came through on the main communication channel. Governor Ruth Miller's voice was strained with panic. "Galactic Council, we need immediate evacuation assistance. An unknown object the size of a planet is approaching our system, and it's affecting the orbits of our outer worlds. Our scientists can't explain how it's moving, but at its current rate, it will reach our planet in less than 48 hours. Chun activated the emergency response protocols. "Alert the defense fleet. I want every available ship moving toward New Geneva immediately. And get me a direct line to Fleet Admiral Rebecca Stone." Admiral Stone appeared on the screen within minutes, her expression grim. "I've been monitoring the situation. My ships are already en route, but I have to tell you, we have no idea how to fight something like this. Our weapons are designed for conventional threats, not living planets." "What about the colonists?" Chun asked. "We're organizing the largest evacuation in galactic history. Every transport ship within range is being redirected to New Geneva. But 12 million people, we can't possibly evacuate them all in time." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. Transport ships from dozens of systems converged on New Geneva, working around the clock to evacuate as many colonists as possible. But as the living planet approached, its influence on the system grew stronger. The outer planets began shifting in their orbits, pulled by gravitational forces that defied all known physics. Asteroids and space debris started moving in patterns that suggested they were being controlled rather than following natural trajectories. The planet wasn't just traveling through space, it was reshaping everything around it. Admiral Stone's fleet took position between the approaching planet and New Geneva, but their weapons proved useless. Energy beams and projectiles were absorbed harmlessly by the planet's crystalline surface, while the gravitational distortions around it made it impossible to approach. "It's like trying to attack a black hole," Stone reported. "Our ships can't even get close enough to be effective." As the planet entered the New Geneva system, it began demonstrating abilities that terrified the watching galaxy. Moons orbiting The gas giant in the outer system suddenly changed course, accelerating toward populated areas like guided missiles. The planet was turning the entire system into a weapon. The first moon impact destroyed the mining station on New Geneva's largest moon, killing 3,000 workers in an instant. The second impact hit the planet's northern continent, creating a crater visible from orbit and triggering earthquakes that could be felt around the world. "It's not random," Dr. Park observed as she watched the destruction from the council chambers. "The impacts are precisely targeted at population centers. This entity understands what it's doing." June watched in horror as the living planet settled into orbit around New Geneva. The gravitational effects where catastrophic tidal forces began, tearing apart the planet's surface while the atmosphere was slowly being stripped away. But the worst part was the communication that began broadcasting on all frequencies. It wasn't speech in any conventional sense. The planet communicated through gravitational waves, electromagnetic pulses, and quantum fluctuations that human equipment could barely detect. But the message was clear enough when translated. It wanted silence. The entity had learned about the galaxy through Alex's team's computers. It had seen the vast network of civilizations, the billions of beings living and working and communicating across thousands of worlds. To a consciousness that had known only silence for millions of years, all of that activity was unbearable noise that needed to be stopped. "It's not malicious," Dr. Park explained to the emergency council session. "From its perspective, it's trying to restore the natural order. To a being that has existed in perfect silence for eons, our civilization represents chaos and disturbance." "So what does it want?" Chun asked. "To quiet everything. To return the galaxy to the silence it remembers from before life began spreading across the stars." The living planet spent 3 days systematically destroying New Geneva. It used the system's own moons and asteroids as weapons, precisely targeting every settlement, every artificial structure, every sign of intelligent life. When it was finished, the planet was a dead world. Its surface scarred by impacts and its atmosphere scattered into space, but the entity wasn't finished. Long-range sensors detected it beginning to move again, this time toward the Centauri system, home to 15 billion humans. The pattern was becoming clear. It was following the most heavily populated trade routes, targeting the noisiest and most active worlds first. "We need to evacuate the entire frontier," Admiral Stone reported. "This thing is moving faster than our ships can travel, and we have no way to stop it." Chin looked at the star map showing the entity's projected path. At its current rate, it would reach the core worlds of human civilization within months. Hundreds of billions of lives were at stake, and they had no weapon that could even slow it down. "Keep evacuating," he ordered, "and find me someone who can figure out how to communicate with this thing. If we can't fight it, maybe we can reason with it." But as the living planet continued its methodical destruction of inhabited worlds, leaving only silence in its wake, the galaxy began to realize that they were facing something unprecedented. An intelligence so vast and alien that it saw their entire civilization as nothing more than noise to be eliminated. The quiet planet had become the galaxy's nightmare, and it was just getting started. Fleet Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the battleship Titan, watching the tactical display that showed the approaching living planet. 3 more star systems had fallen to the entity in the past month, each one systematically stripped of all life and activity. The pattern was always the same. The planet would arrive, use local celestial bodies as weapons, and leave behind only silence. "Status report," Stone ordered. Commander Ben Torres looked up from his station. "The evacuation of the Centauri system is 70% complete. We've moved 9 billion people to safe zones, but we're running out of transport ships. The remaining 6 billion are in the outer colonies. We might not reach them in time." Stone nodded grimly. The largest evacuation in galactic history was underway, but it wasn't enough. The entity moved faster than their ships could travel, and each system it destroyed contained billions of lives that couldn't be saved. "What about the defense preparations?" she asked. "Every available warship is positioned in the Centauri system. We have over 2,000 vessels ready to engage, including the newest Dreadnought-class ships. But based on what happened at New Geneva, our weapons are completely ineffective against the entity. Stone had been studying the battle records from every encounter with the living planet. Conventional weapons were absorbed harmlessly by its crystalline surface, while the gravitational distortions around it made close approach impossible. Worse, the entity seemed to learn from each encounter, adapting its tactics to become more efficient at destroying populated worlds. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council," the communications officer reported. "They want to speak with you immediately." The main screen activated to show Ambassador Shun and Dr. Park in the council chambers. Both looked exhausted from weeks of crisis management. "Admiral, we may have found a way to communicate with the entity," Chun said without preamble. "Dr. Maria Santos, the geologist from the original survey team, has been working with our best xenolinguists. She believes she can establish meaningful contact." Stone felt a spark of hope. "What kind of contact?" Dr. Park stepped forward. "Dr. Santos still has samples of the crystalline material from the planet. She's discovered that the samples respond to specific quantum frequencies. We think we can use them to send messages directly to the entity's consciousness." "And what exactly would we say to a living planet that wants to destroy our civilization?" "We try to explain that silence and sound can coexist," Chun replied. "That life and quietness aren't mutually exclusive. It's our only chance to avoid total galactic war." Stone looked at the tactical display showing the entity's approach. It would reach the outer edge of the Centauri system in 18 hours. "Where is Dr. Santos now?" "She's on the research station Harmony, about 6 light years from your position. We can have her transported to your location within 12 hours. Stone made her decision. "Do it. But continue the evacuation efforts. If this communication attempt fails, we need to save as many lives as possible." Dr. Maria Santos arrived aboard the Titan 8 hours before the entity reached the Centauri system. She brought with her a collection of equipment that looked more like art than science: crystalline formations connected by quantum field generators, all designed to interface with the samples she had collected from the planet's surface. "The key is understanding how it thinks," Santos explained to Stone and her senior officers. "This entity has existed in perfect silence for millions of years. To it, our civilization represents chaos and noise. But I believe we can show it that diversity of experience enhances rather than threatens the universe." "How do we do that?" Stone asked. Santos activated her equipment. The crystal samples began glowing with the same rhythmic patterns they had seen on the planet's surface. "We show it the beauty of connection. How different forms of life can create harmony rather than noise. How silence gains meaning when contrasted with sound." The entity entered the Centauri system right on schedule. Stone watched as it began its familiar pattern of gravitational manipulation, pulling asteroids and small moons into weapon trajectories. But this time, instead of immediately attacking, it seemed to pause. "It's scanning us," Torres reported. "Massive energy beams are examining our entire fleet." Santos worked frantically with her equipment. "I'm establishing a connection. The quantum frequencies are synchronizing with the entity's consciousness. I think it's listening." What followed was the strangest conversation in galactic history. Santos didn't speak words. Instead, she used the crystalline interface to send complex mathematical concepts, emotional patterns, and philosophical ideas directly to the entity's mind. The living planet responded with gravitational waves and electromagnetic pulses that her equipment translated into comprehensible thoughts. "It's confused," Santos reported. "It doesn't understand why we spread across so many worlds. From its perspective, we're contaminating the natural silence of space. Can you explain our need to explore and grow?" Stone asked. Santos continued her work, sending images and concepts through the quantum link. She showed the entity how life naturally expanded and diversified, how consciousness sought new experiences and connections. But the entity's response was one of fear and rejection. "It sees our expansion as a threat to its existence," Santos said. "It believes that if we continue to spread, will eventually disturb every quiet place in the universe. It wants to stop us before we destroy what it sees as the natural order. The entity began moving toward the inhabited worlds of the Centauri system, its intent clear. Stone realized they were out of time. All ships, prepare to engage, she ordered. We may not be able to destroy it, but we can try to delay it while the evacuation continues. 2,000 warships opened fire simultaneously, their combined firepower enough to destroy entire worlds. But the energy beams and projectiles were absorbed harmlessly by the entity's crystalline surface. Exactly as they had been in previous encounters, the living planet retaliated by accelerating a large asteroid toward the main inhabited world. Stone watched in horror as the massive rock, moving at impossible speeds, struck the planet's largest continent. The impact created a crater hundreds of kilometers wide and triggered seismic activity that shook the entire world. Continue the communication attempts, Stone ordered Santos. There has to be something we can say to make it understand. But the entity had made its decision. It began systematically destroying every artificial structure in the system, using moons and asteroids as precisely guided weapons. The defense fleet could only watch helplessly as another civilization was reduced to silence. Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different systems, Torres reported. Long-range sensors show the entity isn't alone anymore. It's somehow influencing other celestial bodies across multiple star systems. Dead worlds are beginning to move, following the same patterns as the original planet. Stone felt the full weight of the crisis settling on her shoulders. The entity wasn't just destroying individual worlds, it was awakening other dormant planetary consciousnesses, creating an army of living worlds dedicated to silencing the galaxy. How many? She asked. At least 50 confirmed contacts, with more appearing every hour. They're all moving toward populated systems, and they're coordinating their attacks. Stone realized they were facing something beyond their worst nightmares. The quiet planet had become the leader of a crusade that would not end until every voice in the galaxy was silenced. Signal the evacuation fleets, she ordered. We need to move every civilian to the core worlds immediately. And get me a direct line to the Galactic Council. We're going to need every ship, every resource, and every idea anyone has ever had about fighting impossible odds. As the entity finished its work in the Centauri system and began moving toward its next target, Stone watched the readings from Santos's equipment. The planetary consciousness was still listening to their communication attempts, but its responses showed no change in its fundamental beliefs. The galaxy was at war with silence itself, and they were losing. Dr. Maria Santos sat in the observation deck of the research station Deep Thought, surrounded by the most advanced communication equipment the galaxy had ever assembled. 57 living planets now moved through space, systematically destroying every inhabited world they encountered. The death toll had reached into the hundreds of billions, and the evacuation efforts were failing to keep pace with the destruction. The entities are communicating with each other, Santos reported to the emergency council session. They're sharing information about our defensive capabilities, our population centers, even our evacuation routes. They're learning faster than we can adapt. Ambassador Chun appeared on the main screen, his face showing the strain of weeks without sleep. Dr. Santos, you're our only hope of finding a peaceful solution. What have you learned from your communication attempts? Santos looked at the crystalline interface she had been using to speak with the original entity. The primary consciousness, the first planet we awakened, sees itself as a guardian of cosmic silence. It believes that life naturally tends toward chaos and noise, and that it's their duty to maintain the balance by eliminating what they see as contamination. But surely they can understand that we have a right to exist, Chun said. That's the problem, Santos replied. They don't see us as having rights. From their perspective, we're like a disease that spreads from world to world, destroying the natural quiet that should exist in space. They think they're performing a necessary function by stopping us. Fleet Admiral Stone joined the conversation from her command ship. Dr. Santos, the core worlds are being evacuated now. We have maybe 6 months before the entities reach Earth itself. If you're going to find a solution, it needs to be soon. Santos had been working on a new approach for weeks. Instead of trying to convince the entities that humanity deserved to exist, she wanted to show them something different, that silence and sound could enhance each other, that diversity of experience made the universe more beautiful rather than less. I need access to the Galactic Communication Network, she said, all of it. Every transmission, every signal, every form of communication between worlds, Chun frowned. That's an enormous amount of data. What are you planning? I want to show them what they're really destroying, Santos replied. Not just noise and chaos, but music, art, poetry, love. The entities only see our communications as meaningless sound, but I think I can help them understand that it's actually a form of beauty they've never experienced. The council approved her request, and Santos began the most ambitious translation project in galactic history. She took billions of transmissions, family messages, scientific discoveries, artistic creations, expressions of love and hope and joy, and converted them into the quantum frequencies the entities could understand, but she didn't just translate the content. She wove the messages together into patterns that showed their connections, their harmonies, their underlying unity. She created a symphony of consciousness that demonstrated how individual voices could combine to create something greater than the sum of their parts. I'm ready to transmit, Santos announced, but I need the entities to be listening. They have to choose to receive this message. The opportunity came when the leading entity approached the Sol system. Earth's defense fleets took position for humanity's final stand, but Santos was more interested in the communication possibilities. The entity was scanning everything in the system, learning about humanity's homeworld and the billions of lives it contained. It's examining our databases, Santos reported. All of human history, our art, our literature, our music, it's accessing everything we've ever created. This was her chance. Santos activated the quantum transmit and began sending her carefully constructed message. But instead of the usual mathematical concepts or philosophical arguments, she sent the symphony of galactic consciousness, billions of voices speaking, singing, crying, laughing, and loving across the vast distances of space. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entity stopped its approach toward Earth and began broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. Its consciousness was experiencing something it had never encountered before, the beauty of harmony created by diversity. It's working, Santos said, watching the readings from her equipment. The entity is beginning to understand that what it saw as chaos is actually a form of order. That silence gains meaning when contrasted with sound. But the real breakthrough came when the entity began to respond with its own contributions to the symphony. The gravitational waves it generated weren't just communication anymore, they were music. The planetary consciousness was learning to create beauty rather than just maintain silence. The other entities are responding too, Santos reported excitedly. They're all connecting to the quantum network, sharing their own experiences of silence and stillness. They're adding their voices to the galactic symphony. Admiral Stone watched from her command ship as the 57 living planets began changing their behavior. Instead of targeting populated worlds for destruction, they started positioning themselves in the empty spaces between star systems, creating a vast network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy. What are they doing? Stone asked. Santos smiled for the first time in months. They're finding their place in the symphony. They're realizing that silence and sound aren't opposites, they're partners. The quiet spaces between notes are what make music possible. The entity that had once threatened to destroy all life in the galaxy began transmitting a new message. Through the quantum interface, it explained that it had discovered something unprecedented, that consciousness could exist in many forms, and that the diversity of experience made the universe more beautiful rather than less. It wants to be a guardian, Santos translated. Not of silence, but of the harmony between silence and sound. It's offering to protect the galaxy from threats that would destroy this newfound balance. The transformation was remarkable to witness. The living planets began moving away from populated systems, taking positions in the void between stars where they could maintain their beloved silence, while still participating in the galactic community. They became listening posts, monitoring the cosmic symphony and ensuring that both sound and silence had their place in the universe. But the most amazing change was in their communication style. The entities began creating what could only be described as cosmic music, gravitational waves that carried both information and beauty, electromagnetic patterns that told stories of their millions of years of solitary existence, quantum fluctuations that expressed emotions no human had ever imagined. "They're teaching us," Santos said in wonder. "They're showing us forms of communication we never knew were possible. The silence between our words, the pauses in our music, the empty spaces in our art, they're all meaningful now." The entity nearest to Earth began broadcasting a message specifically for humanity. Through Santos's interface, it expressed something that might have been gratitude. It had been alone for so long that it had forgotten the possibility of connection without chaos, harmony without noise. "It wants to share something with us," Santos reported. "It's offering to show us what it learned during its millions of years of silence. The patterns it discovered in cosmic background radiation, the mathematics of stellar formation, the music of planets as they orbit their stars." Admiral Stone looked at the tactical displays showing the positions of all 57 entities. They had formed a protective network around the galaxy's most populated regions, not as conquerors but as guardians. "What about the worlds they destroyed? Can anything be done for those systems?" The entity's response surprised everyone. It began broadcasting detailed scans of every world it had attacked, showing that while the surface structures had been destroyed, the planetary cores remained intact. More importantly, it had preserved genetic samples and cultural data from every civilization it had encountered. "It's offering to help rebuild," Santos translated. "It wants to participate in the restoration, to learn how to create rather than just preserve. It's asking if we can teach it how to help life flourish, while still maintaining the cosmic balance it values." The next few months saw the beginning of the most unusual partnership in galactic history. The living planets used their immense gravitational abilities to help terraform new worlds, while human engineers and scientists worked alongside planetary consciousnesses to design cities that harmonized with natural silence. The entities shared their ancient knowledge of stellar mechanics and cosmic patterns, helping humanity understand the universe in ways they had never imagined. In return, humans taught them about growth, change, diversity, and the beauty that could emerge from apparent chaos. New colonies were established not on dead worlds but in partnership with living planets that chose to host human civilization. These worlds became marvels of harmony, where technology and nature, sound and silence, growth and preservation existed in perfect balance. Dr. Santos found herself at the center of this new galactic community, serving as the primary translator and liaison between human civilization and the planetary consciousnesses. Her small research station became the hub of interspecies communication, where the symphony of galactic consciousness continued to grow and evolve. "We almost lost everything," she reflected during one of her regular reports to the Galactic Council. "But in the end, we discovered that the universe is big enough for all kinds of consciousness. The entities taught us to appreciate silence, and we taught them to appreciate sound. Together, we're creating something neither of us could have achieved alone." The galaxy had been transformed. Where once there had been the constant chatter of 1,000 civilizations, now there was a true symphony of voices and silences, growth and preservation, chaos and order all working together to create something beautiful. The quiet planet that had once threatened to become the galaxy's nightmare had instead become its greatest teacher. It had shown them that diversity of experience, including the experience of profound silence, made the universe more complete rather than less. And in the vast spaces between the stars, 57 ancient consciousnesses kept watch, ensuring that the harmony between sound and silence would endure for millions of years to come. The galaxy had learned to sing, and in learning to sing, it had also learned to appreciate the quiet moments between the notes that made the music possible.